The space station Keras 9 floated like a lonely island in the dark sea of space. It was large, shaped like a shining ring slowly spinning above a swirling blue planet. Many different species lived and worked there. Some were tall, some were small, some had scales, others had fur. The station was meant to represent peace across the galaxies. But peace did not always mean understanding. There were walls between hearts, even if there were no walls between rooms. Among the many workers on Keras 9 was a young human named Evan Carter. He was not a soldier, not a hero, and not someone who wanted attention. He worked as a maintenance engineer, fixing broken wires, power cells, and old machines that others didn't want to touch. His hands were steady, his voice soft, and he always tried to smile even when life felt heavy. He had come from Earth with quiet dreams of exploring the stars, hoping to find something bigger than the small life he left behind. But the station felt cold. Not in temperature, no, the temperature was carefully controlled. It was the people who were cold. Humans were a minority there. Most of the workers were from faraway worlds with different cultures, different values, and different ways of showing emotion. Conversations were short. Smiles were rare. Evan tried to talk to people, but most only nodded and walked away. Still, Evan did his job well, and sometimes, when he needed comfort, he would stand near the observation window and look at the stars. They made him feel small, but not in a bad way. They reminded him that life was big, and that maybe loneliness was just part of finding one's place in the universe. But there was one person in the station no one dared approach. Her name was General Varel. She was from the Threxian Empire, a species known for strength, discipline, and fierce warrior culture. Her skin was a deep silver, shining faintly under the lights like polished metal. Her eyes were sharp and intense, glowing softly like burning embers. She wore armor even when she didn't have to. Every step she took sounded heavy and final, like a drumbeat in a war march. They said she had led armies. They said she never lost. They said she was dangerous, and Evan believed all of that, because whenever she passed through a room, people grew silent, like they were afraid to breathe too loudly. Evan had never spoken to her. Not even once. He didn't have a reason to. Their worlds were too different. She was a warrior. He was just a technician. She was respected, feared, admired. He was simply there, working quietly, trying not to take up space. But Evan noticed things others didn't. He paid attention to small, quiet details. And he noticed that sometimes when Varel walked through the halls, her steps slowed for just a moment, like she was tired, like she was not only a warrior, but a person carrying something heavy inside her. He never said this to anyone. He barely admitted it to himself. But somewhere deep in his heart he felt that she was lonely, not because she lacked power, but because she had too much of it. People admired her strength, but no one tried to understand her. One evening, the station was dim and quiet after long training drills. Evan was walking to the maintenance bay when he noticed a message alert on his work tablet. Power cell failure. Training hall. Immediate repair required. He sighed softly and turned around. He was tired, and his back hurt from carrying equipment all day. But he always finished his tasks. So he walked to the training hall, pushing the large door open with slow, careful movement. He expected the hall to be empty, but it wasn't. General Varel was there. She was standing alone in the center of the room, removing her heavy armor piece by piece. The metal plates clinked softly as they fell to the floor. Without the armor, she looked different, less like a statue, more like a living being who felt pain, exhaustion, and time. For the first time, Evan saw her not as a warrior, but as someone simply trying to breathe. He froze without meaning to. He didn't stare out of disrespect. He stared because something inside him recognized loneliness in her. And in that single second, Varel lifted her head and looked right at him, her eyes locked with his. That was the moment everything began. Or perhaps, the moment everything changed. The room felt very still, as if time itself had stopped to watch what would happen next. Evan stood frozen near the entrance, a small toolkit in his hands. General Varel stood in the center of the training hall, half out of her armor, her silver skin catching the soft lights above. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two souls from different worlds, connected by an unexpected silence. Her voice broke the stillness. Human. The word echoed in the wide hall, firm, but not angry, more like she was identifying something that surprised her. Evan swallowed and tried to speak. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm here to repair the power cell. I didn't know you were... He stopped before saying changing, afraid it would sound disrespectful. Virel watched him with unreadable eyes. Most would have trembled under that gaze. But Evan didn't, not because he was brave, but because he was simply honest. She took a slow step toward him. Not threatening, but deliberate. You looked at me, she said. Her tone was quiet. Too quiet for someone known as a warrior feared across star systems. Evan's heart beat faster, but he did not look down. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't look out of disrespect. I just saw someone who looked tired. That made her stop. Her expression changed. Not obviously, but gently, like a ripple in still water. She blinked once, slowly, almost uncertain. No one has ever said that to me, she murmured. Evan hesitated, then nodded. Most people only see your armor. They don't see you. Virel turned her head slightly, as if she were studying him more carefully now. Not as a soldier studies a threat, but as a person studies a mystery. I am trained to appear strong, always. To show weariness means weakness. Her voice held. Something heavy there. Something human hearts recognize too. Well, Evan placed his toolkit down, kneeling near the broken power cell. His movements were gentle but sure. He didn't speak right away. He wanted his words to be true. Where I come from, he finally said, feeling tired means you're fighting hard. It means you're carrying something difficult. And there's nothing weak about that. Virel's hands paused in the middle of removing a shoulder plate. No one on the station would have dared speak to her like this. Softly, simply without ceremony or fear. She didn't reply for some time. Evan worked quietly, the small sparks from his tools lighting the air like tiny fireflies. The silence between them was not empty. It felt warm. It felt shared. Finally, Virel spoke again. You did not bow. Evan looked up, confused. Should I have? Most do, out of fear. Or respect. Or both. He smiled, just a little. I think respect comes from understanding someone, and I don't know you yet. Her lips parted slightly, not in anger, but in surprise. No one ever said yet to her. People stayed away. They were afraid of getting close to someone made of steel and battle scars. But here was a human, small, soft, warm, speaking to her like she was simply alive. Your kind is unusual, she said quietly. Evan chuckled under his breath. Humans are strange. We get scared, we cry, we hope too much. But we try, even when it hurts. Virel sat down slowly on a bench nearby, resting her elbows on her knees. She looked less like a general now and more like someone finally letting her guard fall a little. And Evan noticed something in her eyes. Loneliness. Deep. Long. Heavy. He recognized it because it was also inside him. He tightened a wire on the power cell, the device humming back to life with a soft blue glow. He closed the panel and stood up. There, he said. It's fixed. Virel didn't stand. She only looked at him with something new, something almost vulnerable. Do you fear me? She asked. Evan shook his head slowly. No. Why not? He took a gentle breath. Because when I saw you, I didn't see a weapon. I saw someone who has carried her life alone for too long. Her eyes widened. Not from anger, but from something deeper. Something she didn't have a name for. The silence returned. But this time, it felt like understanding. The next day on Kairos 9 felt strangely different. No one said anything out loud, but something in the air had shifted, like a quiet wind before a change in season. Evan woke early as usual. He always started his mornings with the hum of metal, doors, the soft clicking of tools, and the faint vibration of engines deep inside the station walls. But today, as he walked the corridor to begin his shift, his steps felt lighter, though he didn't quite understand why. Maybe it was because of her. He hadn't expected anything to come from the moment in the training hall. He thought it would be like throwing a pebble into a deep lake. The ripples would fade quickly, forgotten. People lived separate lives here. Walls of culture, pride, and fear kept everyone apart. But life had decided to surprise him. When he entered the cafeteria later that day, the room filled with officers, soldiers, scientists, and workers, voices blending like dull noise. He saw her. General Virel, sitting alone at a table near the large observation window. Her back straight. Her gaze pointed toward the glowing stars outside. No one sat within 5 seats of her. People always made space for her presence, not out of respect, but out of silent fear. Evan hesitated. The room seemed to watch without watching, but he remembered her eyes last night, not fierce, not sharp, lonely. So he walked, not fast, not slow, just steady. He placed his food tray down and sat across from her, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. The room went quiet in a way that wasn't noticeable but felt. Conversations softened, eyes tilted. People pretended not to see what they were clearly observing. Virel looked at him with that same unreadable expression. "You came," she said. "I did," Evan replied, his voice gentle. There was no dramatic meaning behind the words, no tension, just simple truth. For a moment neither of them spoke. They simply shared space, shared quiet. And in a station where silence usually meant distance, this silence was different. It was close. Virel finally broke it. "In my culture," she said, staring out the window, "sharing a meal means acknowledgement of presence, a small bond, nothing more." But her tone carried meaning beneath the surface. Evan nodded. "Where I come from, it means something similar. It means we don't want to be alone while we eat." Her head turned slightly, just enough to show she understood the emotion behind his words. She spoke again, slowly. "You said yesterday that you do not know me yet." A pause. "Would you like to?" The question surprised him, not because of what she asked, but because of how she asked. Her voice was not commanding. It was careful. "Yes," Evan answered simply. "I would." Her posture changed subtly, relaxing, like a shield lowering 1 inch. So they talked. Not about wars, not about heroism, not about planets conquered or lost. They talked about small things. Evan told her about Earth, the oceans, the trees, the sound of rain hitting windows. Things he missed, things he wished he had appreciated more. Virel listened, eyes softer than anyone had ever seen. She spoke. Then, not of battles, but of the sky on her homeworld, Threxia, where 2 suns set at once, painting the horizon silver and violet. She told him how the warriors would stand silent during sunset, believing the light passed judgment on their hearts. Evan listened like every word mattered, and something unusual happened. For the first time in years, Virel laughed, not loud, not wild, just a soft, breath-like laugh. But in that moment it was enough to silence the room entirely. No one had ever heard the Threxian general laugh. Not once. Evan smiled, warm and genuine. "That's a good sound," he said. She blinked, stunned he dared say so. But she didn't correct him, because she realized something. She liked being seen, not as a symbol, not as a legend, not as a weapon, but as someone alive, someone real. Their lunch ended quietly. No dramatic declaration, no promises. But when they stood, they walked out together. And every pair of eyes in the cafeteria followed them, not with fear, not with confusion, but with questions. Something unseen had begun, something fragile yet powerful. 2 lives that had always walked alone had taken their first step side by side. The silence in the alien training arena was deafening. Kyle stood a few meters away, his human senses screaming with both fear and awe. Across from him, the alien warrior, Vera, moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost unreal. Her armor reflected. The soft glow of the arena lights and the faint hum of her energy blade sent a chill through his bones. Cale's heart thumped loudly in his chest, not just from fear but from a strange, unexpected admiration. He had never seen someone fight like her, not even in the hollow simulations back on Earth. He tried to focus on his instructions, the basic, defensive stance the alien instructors had drilled into him since his arrival, but Cale's eyes betrayed him. Just for a brief second he glanced at her face. It was a mistake. His gaze lingered too long and Vera noticed. Her eyes, sharp and golden, locked onto his with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and alive. For a moment, Kale felt frozen, unsure whether to move or stay. Every instinct told him to look away, to respect the distance between them, but a part of him was captivated, awed by her presence. Veyra's response, however, was not what he expected. She didn't snap, didn't lash out in anger at the breach of protocol. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him. It was a small gesture, but to Kale, it carried weight, an unspoken acknowledgement that he was trying, fumbling, but learning. And then, almost imperceptibly, a corner of her lips curved upward. Not a smile in the human sense, but a sign that she recognized his courage. That small movement ignited something inside him, a surge of confidence he didn't know he possessed. The next moment, the arena's automated systems activated. Holographic opponents appeared around them, phantoms of alien warriors designed to push cadets to their limits. Kale's heart raced, but now the fear was accompanied by determination. He raised his makeshift energy shield, remembering every lesson he had been taught. Veyra moved around him like a predator and a guide at the same time, her strikes precise and deliberate, forcing him to react with speed he didn't know he had. Each time he parried or dodged successfully, her golden eyes flickered with approval, a silent cheer that resonated deeper than any voice could. The battle continued, minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Kale's muscles ached, his breaths came in ragged gasps, and sweat stung his eyes. Yet every mistake he made was met not with scorn, but with subtle correction. Veyra's movements taught him not just how to defend or attack, but how to anticipate, how to feel the rhythm of combat. He realized that the glance he had given her earlier was a turning point, not just for their interaction, but for his own growth. That brief moment of connection had shifted something fundamental. He wasn't just a human struggling to survive in an alien world. He was being seen as a warrior in the making. As the holographic opponents vanished, leaving them alone in the arena once more, Kale sank to one knee, exhausted but exhilarated. Veyra approached, her presence imposing yet strangely comforting. She crouched slightly to meet his gaze, and this time her message was unmistakable. Respect, recognition, and perhaps, in a way, a bond that transcended species, training, and expectations. Kale felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. He had faced the fear of being inadequate, the terror of making mistakes in front of someone far superior, and he had survived. More than that, he had earned a kind of trust, subtle but undeniable. Veyra's golden eyes met his one last time before she straightened, turning away with the effortless command of someone used to leading and teaching. In that moment, Kale realized something profound. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as fragile, impulsive, and unpredictable. But perhaps it was precisely that unpredictability, that raw courage, that allowed them to reach places others could not. And maybe, just maybe, that brief glance he had given, an honest human moment, had shown her something she hadn't expected, that there was a spark in him, a spark worth recognizing. As the arena doors hissed closed behind her, Kale stood slowly, feeling a mixture of exhaustion, pride, and an unshakable curiosity. He knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns, but he now understood one unchanging truth. A human could survive, adapt, and even inspire in ways others might never imagine. And with that knowledge, Kale stepped forward, ready for whatever challenge came next, carrying with him the unspoken approval of the alien warrior who had, in a single glance, changed everything. The next day, Kale found himself on the outskirts of the alien city, a place that stretched with impossible architecture, towers spiraling like liquid metal into the sky. The human settlement liaison had warned him that navigating the city was difficult for outsiders, but Kale wasn't thinking about that. His mind was still on Veyra, the alien warrior whose glance had ignited something inside him. He replayed it over and over, wondering what it truly meant, why a warrior of her stature had acknowledged him at all. The streets were bustling with creatures of all shapes and sizes. Kale noticed the precision in their movements, the silent communication of their gestures. He realized how small he felt, how fragile his human frame seemed among beings built for speed, strength, and instinct. And yet there was a spark inside him, a reminder from the arena that humans had something unique. Something unpredictable, something others might never fully understand. Kyle's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden commotion in the marketplace. A group of alien youths had cornered a smaller creature, one barely able to defend itself. Instinct kicked in. Without thinking, Kale ran forward, shouting in a mix of alien phrases he barely remembered and human forcefulness. The aliens turned toward him, surprised, but the smallest among them, scared and trembling, took advantage of Kale's interference to break free. Kale felt his chest pound, adrenaline and fear mixing into something almost intoxicating. Vera appeared then, seemingly out of nowhere. She moved with that same effortless grace, her golden eyes assessing the situation in seconds. The bullies froze as she approached, and Kyle could see the shift in their posture, fear, respect, and awareness that they were no longer in control. Vera didn't raise her blade. She didn't yell or punish them in the way a warrior might. Instead, her gaze alone conveyed authority. Kale had learned in the arena that power wasn't always about strength. It was about presence. When the situation calmed, Vera turned to Kale. There was a brief pause, long enough for him to feel like a child caught doing something daring. She studied him again, that familiar tilt of her head, that small sign of recognition. Then she spoke, her voice low, controlled but carrying weight. "You act without fear," she said. "But you also act without arrogance. That is rare among humans." Kale blinked. Her words were simple, but they cut through the doubt and insecurity that had lingered in him since leaving Earth. They walked together through the winding streets. Vera spoke sparingly, yet every word was precise, each phrase carrying meaning beyond what the human mind could easily grasp. Kale listened, absorbing what he could. He felt the first real bond forming between them, one that didn't require words or shared culture. It was understanding, respect, and a strange mixture of challenge and trust. Hours passed, and Kale found himself exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He was contributing, being seen, and even inspiring in ways he hadn't imagined possible. Vera paused atop a ridge that overlooked the sprawling city below. The sun, or whatever light source bathed the city, cast long shadows across the alien towers. "Humans," she said quietly, "have a stubbornness that is dangerous to underestimate. You reminded me of that today." Kyle swallowed, feeling the words resonate deep inside. He thought of all the times humans had been dismissed, treated as fragile and replaceable. And yet here he was, a single human standing in a city of warriors, recognized for courage rather than size, for heart rather than muscle. For the first time he understood that HFY wasn't just a slogan or a claim, it was truth. Human adaptability, courage, and unpredictability could turn the tide in situations others thought hopeless. As the sun dipped lower, Kale realized he had crossed a threshold. No longer would he approach challenges as a fragile outsider. With Vera's silent guidance, with the knowledge that humans could inspire respect, he felt unstoppable. He wasn't invincible, he was human, but that was enough. Humans had survived against impossible odds before, and he would continue that legacy here, in a world that hadn't yet learned to measure human courage. Vera's hand briefly brushed against his shoulder, a rare gesture of solidarity. Kale felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. It was trust, respect, and a quiet acknowledgement that their paths were now intertwined. Whatever came next, battles, challenges, and tests beyond imagination, Kale knew one truth above all. Humans were never to be underestimated, and sometimes, a single human's courage could change everything. The night fell over the alien city like a velvet curtain, and Kale found himself in a quiet alley, the hum of distant engines and alien chatter fading into a soft background. His body ached from the day's lessons, yet his mind was restless. Every encounter, every glance from Vera seemed to echo inside him. He realized that his journey here was more than just learning to survive. It was learning to belong, to prove that humans could stand shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's most formidable beings. Suddenly, alarms rang out across the city, piercing and urgent. Kale's heart leapt into his throat. He sprinted toward the source, instinct and training kicking in simultaneously. The central plaza was in chaos. A rogue group of alien mercenaries had infiltrated the city, their weapons blazing, civilians running in terror. Kale froze for only a moment, then remembered Vera's words and presence. He could act. He could make a difference. He rushed into the fray, dodging energy blasts and debris, He was human, yes, slightly slower, slightly weaker, but he had something that many of the aliens lacked: unpredictability and raw courage. He moved with determination, guiding fleeing civilians to safety, drawing the attention of the attackers, and disrupting their formation. Every action was calculated yet instinctive. Cale realized that he was no longer the outsider, fumbling in an alien world. He was part of the fight, part of the city, part of something larger than himself. Vera appeared then, cutting through the chaos like a storm of golden light. Her energy blade moved with lethal precision, disarming attackers without a hint of hesitation. But Cale noticed something he hadn't before. She was observing him, measuring his actions, silently coordinating with him as if they were connected in a dance. He felt a surge of pride, but also fear. Could he truly hold up against enemies trained for destruction? One of the mercenaries lunged toward a group of children, energy weapons aimed with lethal intent. Without thinking, Cale dove, tackling the alien aside just in time. Pain shot through his arm, but the children were safe. Vera's voice reached him, low but urgent. "Kyle! Behind you!" He barely had time to pivot before another attacker advanced. Using every ounce of his human agility, he dodged, rolled, and countered with a makeshift strike. The alien staggered, giving Vera the opening she needed to end the fight. When the dust settled, the plaza was a scene of chaos, but the civilians were alive, the attackers defeated or fleeing. Cale collapsed to his knees, sweat and blood mixing on his face. His arm shook, his chest heaving, yet he felt something profound. He had done it. Against impossible odds, he had survived. He had protected life not because he was the strongest, but because he refused to be underestimated. Vera approached slowly, her gaze steady. Cale met her eyes, exhausted and exhilarated. There was no need for words, her expression said it all. Respect, approval, recognition, and something more subtle, something that hinted at trust. Cale realized that in that moment, he had proven not just to her but to himself, that a human could rise in a galaxy built for warriors. The crowd began to gather around them, whispers of awe and disbelief spreading quickly. Aliens who had doubted him, or humans who had feared failure, were now staring with newfound respect. Cale stood, shoulders aching but spirit unbroken, and looked at Vera. She nodded once, faint but meaningful. That single gesture spoke louder than any words. He had changed the way she, and perhaps others, saw humans forever. As the night sky stretched above the city, Cale felt a warmth deep in his chest. He was no longer just a human in a strange world. He was a symbol, a reminder that courage, resilience, and heart could transcend species. And with Vera by his side, he knew that whatever challenges came next, humans would not just survive, they would inspire, lead, and redefine the impossible. In that quiet, powerful moment, Cale understood the truth of the universe. Being human was more than a weakness or a limitation. It was a spark, a force and a light that could change everything. And tonight, against all odds, he had proven it. The morning sun spilled across the alien city, painting the towers in warm hues of gold and bronze. Kyle stood on a high balcony overlooking the plaza where the previous night's chaos had unfolded. The city was alive again, citizens moving with purpose, merchants setting up their stalls, and children laughing, unaware of how close danger had come. But Cale knew. He had seen fear, faced it, and stood tall when others might have faltered. And for the first time, he felt the weight of what that meant. Vera approached quietly, her presence commanding yet calm. Her golden eyes scanned him not with judgment but with something far deeper: recognition, respect, trust, and perhaps even pride. Kyle realized that their journey together had changed him in ways he could not have imagined when he first arrived on this strange planet. He had entered the alien world as an outsider, unsure, vulnerable, and underestimated, and now he stood as something more, a human who had proven that courage, heart, and determination could inspire even the most disciplined warriors. "You acted well," Vera said softly, her voice carrying over the morning breeze. Not many would have risked themselves like that. Not many would have faced fear and chaos with such resolve. Kyle shook his head, humbled. I just did what I had to," he admitted, his voice still rough from exhaustion. "I didn't think about being a hero, He trailed off, realizing he had no proper words. He had simply acted with his humanity, and it had been enough. Vera studied him, her gaze sharp but not harsh. That is the essence of being human, she said finally. You act with your heart, even when your mind tells you it is impossible. That unpredictability, that courage, it changes everything. Do you understand, Kale? Humans are underestimated not because they are weak, but because no one knows the limits of their will. And now I see those limits. You have no boundaries. A surge of pride and humility washed over Kale. He realized she was not exaggerating. Humans had survived worlds of war, planets on the brink of collapse, species far stronger and faster than themselves, and yet through resilience, ingenuity, and courage they endured. He was one human, but he carried that legacy within him. He had survived not because of armor or weaponry, but because of heart, because of determination, because of human spirit. Vera extended a hand not as a challenge but as a gesture of solidarity. Kyle took it, feeling the strength and trust conveyed in her simple touch. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, not just to this world but to a larger story. He was part of something greater than himself, a story of humans stepping into a galaxy that often underestimated them, and for the first time, Kale understood what that truly meant. Together they turned toward the city, eyes on the horizon where possibilities stretched endlessly. Kale no longer feared the unknown. He had learned that courage could bridge worlds, that respect could be earned in moments of action, and that humans, however small, fragile, or unpredictable, could stand tall among giants. He had glimpsed the future, and it was bright. As the citizens of the city began to notice the human who had faced the mercenaries and survived, whispers of admiration spread. Kale saw the way Vera's allies now looked at him, not with doubt but with recognition. And in that moment he realized something profound. A human could change minds, hearts, and even the course of a battle, simply by daring to act when others hesitated. Kale took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history and destiny on his shoulders, and yet for the first time it did not crush him. It lifted him. The human spirit was not fragile. It was unstoppable, and in a galaxy full of warriors, enemies, and challenges, he had become proof of one undeniable truth. Humans were not just survivors, they were a force to be reckoned with. Vera gave a faint nod, acknowledging the silent truth between them. Kale returned the gesture, understanding that their paths, though different, were now intertwined. Whatever the future held, wars, trials, or impossible missions, he would face it as a human, fully aware of his worth, fully aware of his courage, and fully aware that he had the power to inspire even the strongest alien warriors. The sun rose higher, casting its light on the city, the humans, and the aliens who had learned a lesson they would never forget. And Kyle, standing tall beside Vera, felt an overwhelming sense of triumph, not in weapons or victory, but in proving that the human spirit could endure, inspire, and ultimately change everything.